The Ascension of Montreal, Episode 5, Les Foufounes of the Future. In this episode, we learn about the origins of the Omega Plague and Frank's plan to involve Brigitte to get Henry to return to Montreal. It's a challenge for me to tell my story in a linear fashion because my thoughts unfold in a parallel manner. As soon as I think of something, I also experience a cascade of many other lines of thought that intersect and bifurcate and sometimes circle back to modify my original thought. As I followed the unfolding of my conversation with Anthony, I searched my memory for the files documenting the secret virtual relationship between Henry and Brigitte. Then I analyzed whether this relationship could help accomplish the goal of inoculating Henry with the anthrobots. Bingo! The decision tree I activated indicated that this action plan could actually work. As you could imagine, the Omega Plague profoundly affected human relationships, especially their sexual behavior. After seeing so many of their loved ones die, humans stopped letting themselves feel strong emotions for other people. Without a doubt, forming a bond with someone carried the risk of losing that person suddenly if they developed plague symptoms. The very idea of having sex with another person repulsed many because of the erroneous belief that the plague was contagious. It wasn't. On the contrary, despite all of the misinformation that was circulating, the real cause of the plague resulted from yet another human intervention bringing on unintended consequences. After introducing millions of tons of plastic into the environment, year after year for a century, the microparticles that formed when the plastic disintegrated became ubiquitous. They permeated the entire biosphere and were found in the air humans breathed, the water they drank, and the food they ate. In an attempt to clean up the environment, researchers engineered a bacteria that acted like a mirror image of life. They reversed the chirality of the amino acids and the DNA nucleotides so that the bacteria would feed on waste plastic. Initially, the plan worked very well, until it didn't. The bacteria attached themselves to bits of plastic, producing a biofilm that protected them from external threats while they ingested the plastic. This was fine for the plastic in the external environment. The amount of waste plastic gradually diminished, and the waste products produced by the bacteria were flushed by the water cycle to avoid toxic accumulation. What the researchers hadn't envisioned is that the mirror-life bacteria that attach themselves to the microplastic particles would make their way into humans and take up residence in the warm, wet, dark confines of the human brain. Since their genetic structure had been reversed into the mirror image of the DNA strands found in naturally occurring bacteria that humans and their immune systems had evolved, the human antibodies had no memory of having encountered these foreign bodies before. As a result, they did not bind to the bacteria, marking them for destruction. Instead, the bacteria passed and subsequently multiplied. To make matters worse, the biofilm produced by these pathogens proved to be completely impenetrable to all known antibiotics. The die had been cast. The unopposed microbial predators swept the globe, and for a moment, it looked like humanity would suffer the same fate as the Martians in the H.G. Wells novel, The War of the Worlds. Not exactly a place you would want to bring children into. Yet, humans will be humans, driven by the biological imperative to procreate, and it fell upon me to create a safe place where they could hook up and satisfy their sexual urges. I knew I needed to lure them into a space where they would feel safe and comfortable, and then let nature take its course. For the plague survivors in the city, I decided to build them a place of pleasant memories, a time when the future looked bright and people wanted to be a part of it. There was a special moment and a special place in their local history. I knew that they would want to relive the Man and His World exhibition of Expo 67. I scoured the archives for any information I could find and constructed a virtual replica of the site that had been built on Île Sainte-Hélène. I reconstructed the entire site so that it had the look and feel of the original. To access the site, my virtual visitors had to create an avatar and a passport. The passport allowed them to enter each of the pavilions representing different countries. It also allowed me to identify and track the movements of all the entrants right back to the devices they used to enter the site. The retro pavilions offered avatars a taste of what visiting the sites would have been like, as if they were frozen in time. I also added others that were not part of the original design. These additions offered sensory experiences not included in the official historical program. The goal was to lure my virtual visitors to return regularly. Of course, there were limits on the number of visits allowed to avoid addiction. The Amazonian ayahuasca pavilion generated a lot of interest. However, the cybersex hookup bars drew the most visitors by far. Upon entering, visitors could either retain their passport-derived appearance or assume a new temporary avatar for the duration of their time in the hookup bar. The range of options included race, body shape, sexual orientation, and, of course, gender. While looking through my records, I noticed how many times Henry Clermont had visited the virtual replica of the famous Montreal bar Les Foufounes Électriques. It seemed he couldn't renounce all the advantages that came with privilege, which included access to the site through a satellite connection. It also appeared that this was Brigitte's favorite destination. To top it all off, the times of their arrivals and departures coincided. Clearly, they had developed some sort of attachment. Most likely, the advanced ASMR technology of their virtual reality headsets allowed them to experience an orgasm in their own bodies, a digital wet dream. The oxytocin produced by these orgasms caused them to bond in a weird virtual way with a real-world physical component. Another unusual thing about their repeated coupling is that both Brigitte and Henry took on avatars of both genders. Sometimes they coupled as males, sometimes as females, and often they switched genders completely. Brigitte would take on a male avatar, while Henry would assume a female form. Their favorite role-play scenario was when Brigitte transformed into a long-haired, black leather-clad, well-muscled biker with multiple tattoos. Meanwhile, Henry took on the appearance of a petite, traditional Japanese geisha with white makeup, raven black hair tied on top of her head, and a blood-red kimono and wooden sandals. Whatever floats your boat. The important thing was that if I played my cards right, Brigitte would convince Henry to return to the city for the Anthrobot procedure. Little did I know the hand I was dealing them would go horribly wrong. In a microsecond, I replayed Anthony's question about how Henry could have taken on a lover here in the city and replied, "As it turns out, Henry has been a frequent visitor to our virtual Man and His World site and has developed a special friendship with one of your employees. Who's the lucky girl?" "No, don't tell me it's a guy," Anthony replied, squirming slightly in his chair. The mademoiselle in question is Brigitte Lafontaine. She is an AI agent specialist who works in one of your robotic labs in the McGill Applied Science sector near the base of the mountain. She wouldn't be the daughter of Émile Lafontaine, one of the founders of the NDFS here in Montreal. What the fuck? Of all the possible women he could hook up with, he chose her. What? To spite me? Maybe at the beginning, but judging by their hookup patterns, I'd say there's definitely some chemistry there. Henry would never come back to Montreal if the ask comes from you. But if it comes from Brigitte, that's a different story. Why do you think he would go through with it, knowing how Henry feels about me? He certainly wouldn't do it for you. He'd do it for her. While we can't be certain he'll say yes, I think she's our best shot. All right, make it happen, but don't disappoint me. Don't fuck this up. If you would like to read the full text or listen to the audio only, please visit briangibb.substack.com. If you prefer the Storycast version with illustrations, dynamic captions, and voiceover, visit my YouTube channel. You can find it by entering The Ascension of Montreal, Brian Gibb, in the search box. I'll publish a new episode next week. Bye for now.